He didn't have the Sunday scaries. He had a tin of kiwi shoe polish, a horsehair brush, and a quiet 2-hour window where he put his entire world back in order. Sunday in mid-century America was not a day off. It was a psychological airlock between one week and the next. Church in the morning, yes, but what came after was something quieter and more deliberate. A man moved through his home, his yard, his tools, and his family with a kind of unhurried intention that modern life has almost entirely erased. The week did not simply end on Saturday night. It was closed, consciously, by Sunday evening. Here is the remarkable thing about these 25 rituals. Not one of them was written in a book. Not one was taught in a class. No magazine ran a feature on the correct order for Sunday preparation. And yet, from Maine to California, from factory workers to bank managers, American men in the mid-20th century performed nearly identical sequences of tasks every single Sunday. It was never written down because everyone already knew it. The question worth asking now is how that knowing disappeared so completely. The rituals divided themselves naturally into 4 categories, and the first was what you might call the armor. Before a man could face Monday, he had to build it. That process began not with attitude or motivation, but with leather and wax. The physical objects a man carried into the working world were treated as extensions of himself. And Sunday was the day those extensions got restored to their proper condition. A scuffed shoe was not a minor inconvenience. It was a statement about the man wearing it. Ritual number 1, the Sunday shoe shine. It started with smell. Carnauba wax has a particular scent, slightly sweet and waxy, that is completely distinct from anything else in a household. When that tin came open on Sunday afternoon, everyone in the house knew what was happening. The man of the house was getting ready for the week. It was not a quick buff with a paper towel. It was a deliberate sequence that could take 20 minutes per pair. And some men had 2 or 3 pairs rotating through the process. The technique itself was a small piece of forgotten craft. First, a thin coat of polish applied with a dauber brush worked into the leather in tight circles, paying extra attention to the toe cap and the heel. Then a wait of 5 to 10 minutes while the wax set. Then the horsehair brush, moving in fast, short strokes to raise the first layer of shine. Then the snap of the cloth, a cotton rag pulled tight between both hands. It's worked across the toe in rapid, alternating pulls until the leather began to reflect light. The final mirror finish on the toe cap was done with a fingertip wrapped in cloth and a single drop of water. Kiwi Shoe Polish was founded in Melbourne in 1906 and became the dominant brand in American homes by the 1940s. For decades, it was simply part of the Sunday supply kit, as expected in a household as dish soap. Then in 2022, Kiwi quietly announced it would stop selling its products in the United Kingdom, and American sales had already been declining sharply for years before that. The ritual did not die loudly. It just stopped being restocked. One generation forgot to buy the tin, and the next generation never knew the tin existed. Ritual number 2, changing the razor blade. The double-edged safety razor was the standard shaving instrument for American men from roughly the 1920s through the 1960s, and it required a blade change on a specific schedule. Sunday was that day. The ritual was precise. Unscrew the handle, the 2-piece head separates, the spent blade comes out wrapped in its original paper, and the fresh blade drops in with a satisfying click of the head reassembling. Monday's shave had to be flawless. A dull blade on a Monday morning was a failure of Sunday preparation. The mechanics of the double-edged safety razor are worth understanding because they explain why Sunday was the chosen day. A blade typically lasted 5 to 7 shaves before it began to drag rather than cut. A man shaving Monday through Saturday used exactly 6 blades per week at that pace. Sunday was the reset. The spent blade went back into its paper sleeve and into the small cardboard box. It's never loose in the trash where someone could cut themselves. The fresh blade was loaded the night before, so Monday morning carried 0 friction. Your grandfather did not need a tutorial for this. It was simply how the week was structured. Ritual number 3, brushing the hat. This one has almost entirely vanished because the hat itself has vanished. But for American men in the first half of the 20th century, the felt fedora or the Stetson was not an accessory. It was a daily necessity, worn from the moment a man left his front door to the moment he returned. Felt is a compressed fiber material that collects dust, lint, and moisture throughout the week. Sunday was when that accumulation got removed with a dedicated soft bristle brush, always working counterclockwise against the nap of the felt. Hat maintenance was identity maintenance. This is not a romantic overstatement. In mid-century American professional culture, the condition of a man's hat communicated his standing as clearly as his shoes or his collar. A crushed crown or a dusty brim was noticed by other men in the way a wrinkled suit was noticed. The Sunday brushing ritual preserved not just the felt but the shape. It's using the brush to restore the nap and a gentle reshaping of the brim by hand if humidity had pulled it out of line. Some men kept a hat form, a simple wooden block, to store the hat correctly between uses. The care given to the object reflected the seriousness of the man wearing it. Ritual number 4, laying out the week's foundation. This ritual happened at the wardrobe or on the bed, and it was a quiet inventory of what the coming week required. Dress shirts were pulled from the closet and checked under good light for missing buttons. If a button was gone, it got replaced that afternoon, not Monday morning in a panic. Collar stays, it's those small metal or celluloid strips that slid into the underside of a dress shirt collar to keep its points lying flat, were located, matched, and set aside with the shirts they belonged to. The whole process took perhaps 30 minutes and eliminated an entire category of Monday morning disorder. The collar stay deserves its own moment because almost no one under 60 knows what it is. A collar stay is a thin, rigid strip, typically 2 to 3 inches long, made of metal, celluloid, or mother of pearl. That slides into a small sewn pocket on the underside of a dress shirt collar point. Without it, the collar point curls upward by midday, a small but visible sign of a man who has not attended to the details. With it, the collar lies perfectly flat against the tie knot all day. Men carried spares in their breast pocket. They checked them Sunday night. It was a detail so small that it was never discussed, which is precisely why it separated the dressed from the armored. Ritual number 5, polishing the leather briefcase. The work bag in mid-century America was almost universally a leather satchel or hard-sided briefcase, and it received Sunday attention just as the shoes did. Saddle soap was the preferred cleaner, a glycerin-based compound that cleaned the leather surface without stripping its oils. A damp cloth worked the saddle soap into a light lather, wiped clean, and then a conditioning wax or a light buff with a dry cloth finished the process. The clasps got a wipe. The handle got particular attention because that was where sweat and hand oil accumulated through the week. The briefcase received the same care as the shoes, and that was not coincidental. It was part of a unified code of presentation that treated every leather object as part of a single system. Shoes, briefcase, belt, watch strap. All leather, all maintained on the same Sunday schedule, all communicating the same message. The code was real. We just stopped teaching it. A man who shined his shoes, but let his briefcase go gray and cracked was not following the code. The code was comprehensive, or it was nothing. Sunday afternoon was when that comprehensiveness got expressed quietly, without anyone watching. With the armor prepared, attention shifted outward. The second category of Sunday rituals was what you might call the perimeter. A man's relationship to his property in mid-century America was not abstract. It was physical, specific, and regularly confirmed. The house, the yard, the fence line, the basement. These were not just places where life happened. They were a man's domain, and Sunday was the day that domain got inspected, maintained, and mentally reaffirmed. This was not about pride or ego. It was about stewardship, a word that has almost entirely left the masculine vocabulary. Ritual number 6, the property walk. This was a slow, silent circuit of the entire property, typically done in the late morning after church or in the early afternoon before the main meal. It was not a stroll. It was an inspection with a purpose. The man moved from the fence line inward, checking the perimeter first, then working toward the house. He was looking for specific things. It's fallen branches that needed to be cleared before they became a trip hazard, fence boards that had worked loose over the week, frost heave damage in winter. Or standing water in low spots that could indicate a drainage problem developing. What men were actually looking for during the property walk was not dramatic. It was the accumulation of small things that, left unaddressed, became large things. A loose board on the back steps was a minor fix on Sunday afternoon, and a broken ankle on a dark Wednesday morning. A branch resting on the garage roof was an easy removal in calm weather, and a punctured roof in the next windstorm. The walk was a form of early warning, a systematic scan of the property's condition before problems compounded. Men who skipped it for a few weeks in a row consistently reported catching up on 3 or 4 small repairs at once instead of one. The psychological function of the property walk was as important as its practical function, possibly more so. Walking the fence line and finding everything sound produced a specific kind of satisfaction that is very difficult to replicate by other means. It was ownership made physical, not ownership in the legal or financial sense, but in the oldest sense. I have walked this ground, I have checked its condition, and it is well. That confirmation, performed weekly, built a cumulative sense of competence and responsibility that carried into the work week. A man who knew his property was sound-faced Monday differently than one who did not. Ritual number 7, winding the clocks. In a home with mechanical clocks, and most mid-century American homes had at least a mantle clock and many had a grandfather clock as well, the mainspring required winding on a regular schedule. Most quality movements were designed for a 7-day wind, which made Sunday the natural reset point. The brass key was kept in a specific drawer or hung on a specific hook, and the winding followed a specific sequence. Mantle clock first, grandfather clock second, any bedroom clocks last. The key was inserted, turned in careful quarter-turn increments, and stopped precisely when resistance increased, never forcing the spring past its limit. The mantle clock did not wind itself. Every Sunday, somewhere in America, a man opened a small drawer in the sideboard, pulled out a brass key about the size of his thumb, and inserted it into the winding arbor on the clock face. 2 or 3 dozen turns, firm but never forced. Then he moved to the grandfather clock in the hallway and repeated the process. The whole ritual took maybe 4 minutes. But those 4 minutes were the house's weekly heartbeat. And every member of the family heard it, whether they were in the room or not. The clock winding ritual carried weight that a battery swap never could. A mechanical clock runs down, it needs attention, and the man who wound it was making a quiet weekly declaration. This house runs on my attention, it's not on its own. There is something in that 4-minute act that modern timekeeping has entirely erased. We set our phones once and forget them for years. The grandfather who wound his clocks every Sunday was doing something fundamentally different. He was not just keeping time, he was confirming, week by week, that he was still present enough to keep it. Hanging on the wall, near the back door between the coat hooks and the kitchen calendar, was a small brass-cased instrument that most men under 50 today would not recognize on sight. The aneroid barometer, a circular dial, a needle, and a small knob on the front that let you set a reference marker. Every Sunday morning, before coffee was even finished, a man would walk to that instrument and give the glass face a single firm tap with one knuckle. The tap freed the needle from any friction and showed the true current pressure. Then he compared it to where he had set the marker the previous Sunday. The barometer tap was not superstition. It was applied meteorology at the household level. A falling pressure reading meant rain or wind was coming within 24 to 48 hours. A rising reading meant clearing skies. Men used this information to plan the week's outdoor work, to decide whether to leave for a job site early on Tuesday, or to warn a son not to drive a mountain route on Thursday. There were no weather apps. There was a brass dial on the wall, and a man who had learned to read it from his own father, who had learned it from his. The information was free. The skill was inherited. There is a specific kind of annoyance that a squeaky hinge produces. Not urgent enough to fix immediately, but persistent enough that you notice it every single time. During the week, a man would hear it and file it away. It's the bedroom door, the screen door on the back porch, the cabinet under the kitchen sink. By Sunday, he had a mental list of 3 or 4 spots that needed attention. He would pull out the small blue and yellow can of 3-in-1 oil, work his way through the house, and apply a single drop to each hinge pin. The whole walkabout took 20 minutes. The week's small irritations were resolved before Monday arrived. The Sunday oil walkabout was chosen for a specific reason, and it was not arbitrary. Sunday was the one day in the week when the house was quiet enough to hear the squeaks. During the week, the radio was on, the kids were running, the front door was opening and closing. But on Sunday afternoon, after the roast and before the evening, the house settled into a particular stillness. In that stillness, a man could move from room to room and actually hear what needed attention. The ritual was not about the oil. It was about the quality of attention that Sunday's quiet made possible. Weekday noise hid the problems. Sunday silence revealed them. The basement was different from the rest of the house. Cooler, darker, smelling of coal dust or heating oil, depending on the decade and the region. And on Sunday, a man went down there with a purpose. He swept the ash from around the base of the coal furnace or checked the oil level on the fuel oil burner. He looked at the pilot light on the gas unit and confirmed it was burning the right color. It's a steady blue with no yellow wavering at the tip. He checked the flue damper. He brought in the next week's supply of fuel if the bin was running low. This was not glamorous work. But a house that lost heat in February because nobody checked the furnace on Sunday was a house that had failed its occupants. The basement furnace represented something beyond heat. It was the center of a man's stewardship of the house as a physical system. The men who tended boilers on Sunday mornings understood that a house was a machine, and machines required scheduled attention, or they failed at the worst possible moment. There was no outsourcing this knowledge. You could not call a technician at 2 a.m. when the heat went out in January and expect the same result as a man who had checked that pilot light himself every single week for 15 years. The basement was his domain, not because anyone declared it so, but because he was the one who went down there and learned it. Now we move from the house to the machine. Because for the mid-century American man, the car was not a convenience. It was a second domain. It carried him to work, carried his family on Sunday drives, and sat in the driveway as a visible measure of how well he kept what was his. The Sunday car check began the same way almost every time. He walked out to the driveway, sometimes still in his house slippers, popped the hood latch from inside the cab, and walked around to lift the hood. Then he pulled the oil dipstick, wiped it clean on a red shop rag, reinserted it fully, pulled it again, and held it up to the light. What the dipstick actually told him was a story about the engine's week. Fresh oil is amber and nearly transparent when held to light. Oil that has been working hard turns dark brown. Oil that has water contamination looks milky. Oil that is low tells you the engine burned some, which means you check the exhaust for blue smoke next time you start it. A man who did this check every Sunday for 20 years did not need a mechanic to tell him when something was changing. He had 20 years of weekly data stored in his hands and his eyes. The dipstick wipe was not a chore. It was a diagnostic conversation with the machine he depended on. After the dipstick came the tires. He would crouch at each wheel in turn, remove the valve cap and set it on the top of the tire so he would not lose it, press the metal tip of the pencil gauge onto the valve stem, and read the small calibrated stick that shot out the back. The target pressure was written on a card tucked into the glove box, not on the tire sidewall, which shows the maximum, not the recommended. He did all 4 tires, not 3. Not the 2 that looked low, all 4. because a tire that is 2 pounds low does not look low. It just handles differently, wears unevenly, and costs you a blowout on the highway 6 months later. It's the pencil gauge lived in the glove box, not the garage, not the trunk, the glove box, because the man who kept his tire gauge in the glove box was the man who could check pressure anywhere, anytime. It's not just in his own driveway on Sunday morning. That placement was a statement about preparedness. It said, "I do not wait for a gas station attendant to notice my tires are low. I know before he does." The gauge itself cost almost nothing, a few cents in the 1950s. But what it represented was a philosophy of ownership. The man who knows the condition of his equipment is never surprised by it. Its preparedness was not a mindset they talked about. It was a metal gauge in the glove box. Washing the car and finishing the car were two completely different acts, and the men who knew the difference took the second one seriously. After the wash, when the body panels were still damp, he would unfold the chamois. A real chamois is not a synthetic yellow sponge from a gas station rack. It is a piece of treated leather, typically from the hide of a chamois antelope or a split sheepskin, soft as worn cotton when wet, and it pulls water off a painted surface without leaving a single streak or water spot. He would wring it out, lay it flat against the hood, and draw it toward him in long overlapping passes. The car did not just get clean. It got finished. The distinction between washing and finishing was about the final impression, and mid-century American men understood that the final impression was the one that lasted. A car with water spot rings on the hood told a story about the man who drove it. It said he started things but did not complete them. The chamois was the completion. It was also a sensory experience that a machine car wash cannot replicate. The weight of the wet leather in your hands, the squeaking sound as it pulled the last moisture off the glass, the way the paint came up to a depth you could almost see into. That was not vanity. That was craftsmanship applied to a machine you depended on every single day. Saturday was for projects. Sunday was for closing them. The tool bench reset was one of the most psychologically important rituals on the entire list, and it was also one of the most invisible. After Saturday's work, the bench held the evidence, a wrench left open to the wrong size, a screwdriver lying across the vise jaws, a handful of leftover bolts in a small pile near the pegboard. On Sunday afternoon, he put every tool back in its exact place. Wrench on the hook, screwdriver in the slot, leftover hardware sorted into the correct drawer of the metal parts cabinet. The bench was returned to its ready state. The tool bench reset was not about tidiness for its own sake. It was a cognitive act. When a man returned the last tool to its hook on Sunday afternoon, he was performing a mental close on Saturday's project. The work was done. The evidence was filed. The bench was ready for the next problem. This is something productivity researchers now call a completion ritual, and they write papers about how important it is for mental transitions. The men who reset their benches on Sunday afternoons in 1955 did not have the vocabulary for this. They just knew that walking into the garage on Monday morning and seeing a clean bench felt different from walking in and seeing Saturday's chaos still spread across it. The difference was psychological readiness. The pocket knife was not a weapon. It was a tool, and like every tool a man carried, it needed to be kept in working condition. On Sunday afternoon, often on the back steps of the house, where the light was good and there was no reason to hurry, he would sit down with his Whetstone, a small rectangular stone of silicon carbide or natural Arkansas novaculite, and a few drops of honing oil from a small brown bottle. He would lay the blade flat against the stone, raise the spine until the edge met the surface at roughly 20 degrees, and begin drawing the blade across the stone in a controlled arc. The motion was slow. It was not something you rushed. The angle was everything. Hold the blade too flat and you are polishing the face of the bevel, not sharpening the edge. Hold it too steep and you are rolling the edge over into a wire burr that will fold on the first cut. 20 degrees was the standard for a pocket knife, and men who had been doing this since their fathers handed them their first knife at age 10 did not need a protractor to find it. They felt it. After a set number of strokes on each side, maybe 8 to 10 per side, they would test the edge by drawing the flat of the thumbnail lightly across the blade. A sharp edge catches, a dull edge slides. That test was older than the knife itself. We have covered the armor and the machines. Now we move into the third and quietest category of Sunday rituals, the ones that happened at the desk, at the table, in the chair, and on the porch. These were not physical acts of maintenance. They were acts of information, family, rest, and closure. And in some ways, they were the most important rituals of the entire Sunday. It's because they were the ones that prepared not the tools or the vehicle or the house, but the man himself. The mind needed the same weekly attention as the hinges and the tires. Men used to know this without being told. They just expressed it differently than we would today. The Sunday paper arrived thick. In the post-war decades, it could run to 60 or 80 pages with supplements, the comics section, the classified ads, the magazine insert. And a man read it in a specific order that was almost never discussed, but almost universally consistent. He started with the obituaries, not the front page, not the sports, the obituaries. He read the names of people who had died in his town that week, noted their ages, their occupations, their surviving family members. Then he folded that section and moved to sports. The front page came last, if at all. That order was not random. It was a philosophy about what information actually mattered on a Sunday morning. The obituaries came first. Not the sports, not the front page, not the comics. The obituaries. Men who kept this ritual had a specific reason for it, even if they never said it out loud. It's reading who died in your town before you read anything else. Put the week in proportion. It reminded you that the problems you were about to read about on the front page were temporary. The men listed in those columns had faced worse and still showed up. It was a calibration, not morbid curiosity. The checkbook came out once a week on Sunday, and it did not go back until the numbers matched. A man would sit at his desk with a fountain pen, the paper ledger open, and the week's receipts pulled from his shirt pocket or wallet. He added, he subtracted, he compared. If the balance was off by even $1, he found the dollar. This was not accounting in the professional sense. It was something more personal. Where the money went told you exactly who you were and what you valued, and Sunday was when you faced that honestly. The checkbook ritual was also a kind of weekly confession without a priest. A man who spent too much on cigarettes that week saw it in the column. A man who had been generous saw that too. There was no algorithm smoothing it over. No automatic categorization hiding the truth inside a pie chart. Just handwritten numbers in a column, and a man alone with what they said about him. That hour at the desk was one of the most honest conversations a mid-century American man had all week, and he had it entirely with himself. The green hammered steel Stanley Thermos. If you grew up in a house with one of these, you know exactly what it looked like. Olive green, with a red cup that screwed onto the bottom and a cork stopper inside the cap. On Sunday evening, that thermos got rinsed, dried, and set by the back door or on the kitchen counter near the lunch pail. It was not a complicated act. It took maybe 3 minutes. But it said something clear. Tomorrow is already handled. The coffee would be ready. The morning would not start in chaos. Readiness was a Sunday value. That is the phrase that captures what the thermos ritual was really about. It was not about the coffee. It was about the posture of a man who refused to let Monday ambush him. Setting the thermos by the door was the same psychological move as laying out the work clothes the night before, or stacking the folders on the desk. Each small act of preparation was a quiet statement. I have thought ahead. I am not scrambling. Monday morning belongs to me, not the other way around. That posture started Sunday night with a rinsed thermos. The Sunday roast was not just a meal. It was a weekly ceremony, and the carving was the ceremony's central act. The man of the house stood at the head of the table with either an electric knife or a long carving blade he had honed that morning. The family waited. He did not rush. He cut with intention. Serving each person in a specific order that the family understood without it ever being explained. The roast could be beef, pork, or chicken. What it was made of mattered less than the fact that it happened every week. It's at the same table in the same order. The carving roll was a quiet weekly ceremony of provision. That word, provision, is important. It does not just mean putting food on the table. It means demonstrating through a specific repeated act that you have planned ahead. It's that the family's needs were anticipated, that the week's work produced something real you could set in front of the people who depended on you. The man who carved the roast was not performing dominance. He was performing reliability, and because it happened every Sunday without fail, the family absorbed that reliability as a baseline expectation, not a special occasion. After the roast, before the dishes were cleared, the allowance came out. The father would reach into his trouser pocket and produce a small collection of coins he had sorted earlier in the day. Quarters, dimes, it's sometimes a folded dollar bill for the older kids. Each child received their amount in the same order, the same way, every Sunday. There was no negotiation. There was no explanation of why it was this amount and not more. It simply arrived on schedule from a man who had thought about it ahead of time. That consistency was the lesson, not the money itself. What the allowance ritual actually taught had nothing to do with the spending of money. It taught timing. It taught that reliable men deliver on schedule, not when they feel like it, not when they remember, but on the appointed day at the appointed time. A child who received their quarter every Sunday without exception was learning something about how trustworthy men operate. They do not make you ask twice. They do not make you wonder if it is coming. The ritual arrived like the clock on the mantle, wound, accurate, and indifferent to inconvenience. That was the real education. Within 20 minutes of the last plate being cleared, it happened. The recliner accepted him. The Sunday paper, already dissected and reassembled in his preferred order, got folded lengthwise and draped across his face. Not placed. Draped. The newspaper tent over the face was not accidental. It blocked the light. It muffled the noise. It signaled to the household that this man was unavailable for a specific window of time, and that the window was earned. The post-roast nap was as much a part of Sunday as the roast itself, and the family understood it without being told to keep quiet. The newspaper tent nap was earned rest, not laziness, and that distinction mattered enormously in mid-century American households. A man who had spent Saturday doing physical work and Sunday morning tending the house, the car, the tools, and the family had logged a full day before the roast even hit the table. The nap was not an escape. It was a closing bracket on the active morning. It was the body acknowledging that the work was done, and the afternoon could begin on different terms. Men who took this nap without guilt understood something about the rhythm of a complete day that modern culture has largely forgotten. The garage radio had one job on Sunday, and it did that job without interruption. In millions of American homes from the 1940s through the 1970s, a man would tune a tabletop AM radio in the garage or workshop to a specific broadcast and leave it there. Paul Harvey's Sunday programming reached an estimated 24 million listeners at its peak. His voice was unhurried, specific, and full of the kind of detail that rewarded attention. Men did not listen passively. They listened the way they read the obituaries, with their full attention. Because what was being said was worth the investment. The garage radio was a sanctuary, not background noise. That is a distinction worth sitting with. Background noise fills silence. A sanctuary uses silence differently. When a man tuned to Paul Harvey or to the Sunday afternoon baseball broadcast, he was not trying to avoid quiet. He was choosing what would occupy the quiet. The garage was already his domain, separate from the house. It's separate from the family's noise, separate from obligation. The radio brought one voice into that space, a voice he had chosen. And that combination of chosen solitude and chosen sound was its own kind of weekly restoration that no app has successfully replicated. The Sunday drive to the cemetery was not a somber errand. It did not feel like grief, at least not in the way grief is usually understood. It felt like maintenance. A man would pull up in the family car, walk to the family plot, and kneel down with a hand trowel or simply his bare hands to pull the weeds that had grown around the base of the headstones since the last visit. He would straighten a small American flag if one had been placed there. He would note what needed attention. Then he would stand, look at the names on the stones for a moment, and walk back to the car. Pulling weeds from a headstone was maintenance of identity, not grief. That framing changes what the ritual meant. A man who kept the family graves tidy was not dwelling on loss. He was maintaining the record. He was saying, it's in the most physical way possible, that the people buried there still counted, that their names still mattered, that the family line was continuous and cared for. It was the same impulse that made him oil the hinges and wind the clock. The cemetery was simply another part of the property that required weekly attention, and the stakes happened to be higher than a squeaky door. There is a thread connecting the cemetery visit to every other ritual on this list, and it runs through the concept of generational continuity. The man who tended the graves was not just honoring the past. He was modeling something for the children who sometimes came along and watched from a few steps back. He was showing them without a single word of instruction that this is what you do. You show up. You maintain what matters. You do not wait for someone to remind you. The graves, like the clocks and the thermos and the tool bench, were part of a system of care that extended backward in time and forward into the next generation. The paperwork ritual happened at the desk, usually in the late afternoon after the cemetery visit or the nap, when the house was quiet and the week ahead was starting to take shape in a man's mind. He would pull the manila folders from the drawer or the briefcase and sort them. Bills that needed to be paid Monday went in one stack. Letters that needed answering went in another. Work documents were arranged in the order they would be needed. Nothing was filed away that needed attention. Nothing that needed attention was buried under something that did not. The desk was left in a state of readiness. It's not storage. The physical act of stacking those folders was a cognitive handoff. That is the most precise way to describe what it accomplished. A man who left his desk in order on Sunday night did not carry the week's open loops into his sleep. The brain has a documented tendency to rehearse unfinished tasks. It's a phenomenon researchers later named the Zeigarnik effect after the psychologist who identified it in 1927. These men did not know the term. They did not need to. They had discovered the solution empirically. Close the open loops before you go to bed, and the bed is for sleeping, not planning. The porch sit was the last ritual of the day, and it was the only one with no task attached to it. A man would come outside in the final hour of daylight, lower himself into the porch chair, and watch the street. No radio, no newspaper. No conversation required. He might have a pipe or a glass of something, but those were props, not the point. The point was the watching, the street going quiet, the neighbors finishing their own Sundays. The light changing from gold to gray. He was not avoiding Monday. He was finishing Sunday. That distinction is the entire difference between dread and completion. What the porch sit was actually doing was processing, not in the therapeutic sense, not in any way the man sitting there would have named or explained. He was simply allowing the week that had ended and the week that was coming to exist in the same moment without conflict. The rituals of the day had closed every open loop. The armor was ready. The perimeter was checked. The machines were tended. The family was fed. The paperwork was stacked. There was nothing left undone that could be done tonight. So he sat, and because everything was finished, the sitting was not anxious. It was quiet in the way that only a completed day can be quiet. Here is the thing that nobody talks about. The Sunday scaries are a modern invention. They are not a human condition. They are a symptom of a specific kind of emptiness that arrives when you spend Sunday avoiding the week instead of closing it. Your grandfather did not dread Monday morning because he had already handled Monday. By sundown, he had polished his shoes, checked his oil, wound his clocks, and sat quietly on the porch until the week was done. Monday had nothing left to surprise him with. A 2026 survey found that the majority of American workers report feeling behind before Monday even begins. Not behind because of workload. Behind because Sunday never closed. The week never ended cleanly. So the new one started with the weight of the old one still attached. These 25 rituals were not productivity hacks. They were psychological closing ceremonies. They put a period at the end of the sentence so the next sentence could start fresh. That structure is what modern Sunday is almost entirely missing. Look across all 25 rituals, and one thread runs through every single one of them. Transition. Not productivity, not discipline for its own sake. Every ritual on this list moved a man from one state to another, from weekend to week. It's from disorder to order, from the noise of Saturday to the quiet readiness of Monday. The shoe shine was not about clean shoes. The property walk was not about fallen branches. They were about a man deliberately stepping from one version of himself into another, on his own schedule, in his own way. Men used to know this without being told. None of these 25 rituals appeared in a manual. No father sat his son down and explained the psychological mechanics of the property walk or the cognitive benefits of the tool bench reset. The son watched. He absorbed. He noticed that his father was calmer on Monday than other men, that the house ran smoother, that things did not break at inconvenient moments. And then one day he found himself doing the same things. It's in the same order, without quite knowing when he learned them. It's the 5 armor rituals, the shoe shine, the razor blade swap, the hat brushing, the shirt and collar stay check, the briefcase polish. These were not vanity. They were psychological preparation made physical. Each one was a man handling the tools of his public identity before the week demanded them. The wax smell, the snap of the rag, the weight of the collar stay in the palm. These sensory details were not incidental. They were the whole point. The body remembered what the mind had done, and Monday morning felt different because of it. It's the 5 perimeter rituals, the property walk, the clock winding, the barometer tap, the oil walkabout, the furnace check. These were about confirmation. A man needed to know his domain was sound before the week began. It's not because something was always wrong, but because the act of checking made ownership real. Walking the fence line told him something a deed could not. Tapping the barometer connected him to the weather in a way a forecast never would. These rituals turned abstract responsibility into something you could feel under your boots. It's the 5 machine rituals, the dipstick wipe, the tire pressure check, the chamois finish, the tool bench reset, the pocket knife sharpening. These were about honesty. A man who checked his own oil knew the truth about his engine. A man who sharpened his own knife knew the truth about his tools. There was no gap between what he believed about his equipment and what was actually true. That gap, the one between assumed readiness and actual readiness, is where breakdowns happen. These rituals close that gap every single week. The 10 mind and family rituals covered the widest ground. The newspaper read in its specific order. The checkbook balanced to the penny. The thermos rinsed and set by the door. The roast carved at the head of the table. The allowance sorted into quarters, the nap earned and taken without apology. The AM broadcast in the garage, the graves tended, the folders stacked, the porch sit held in silence. 10 rituals, one purpose. Closing the week with intention so the family felt it, not just the man. These were not private. They were performed for an audience of people he loved. When these rituals disappeared, what was lost was not nostalgia. Nostalgia is a feeling. What was lost was structure, specifically the structure that converted Sunday from a passive day into an active closing. Without it, Sunday became a waiting room for Monday. The rituals did not require money or equipment beyond what most households already had. A whetstone, a chamois, a brass key, a barometer. What they required was intention. An intention is exactly what a life without ritual cannot sustain on its own for very long. There is a science to why these rituals worked that the men who practiced them never needed to articulate. Sensory anchors. The smell of carnauba wax told the nervous system that the week was being prepared for. The weight of the brass clock key in the hand marked time as something tended, not just consumed. The pull of honing oil on a whetstone closed a loop that Saturday had opened. These were not metaphors, they were neurological cues. It's repeated weekly that built a reliable internal rhythm. The body knew what day it was because the hands had done the work. The hardest rituals to recover are the ones that never had names. Nobody called it the property walk. Nobody called it the chamois ceremony or the thermos prep. These acts existed below the level of language, which is precisely why they were so durable while they lasted and so invisible when they vanished. You cannot mourn what you cannot name. You cannot teach what you cannot describe. That is the particular cruelty of this kind of loss. There is a whole tradition hiding in what nobody thought to save, and by the time you go looking for it, the men who practiced it are mostly gone. The generational handoff that should have carried these rituals forward simply did not happen, not because fathers stopped caring. But because the world shifted fast enough in the 1970s and 1980s that the rituals began to look outdated before anyone thought to explain why they mattered. Synthetic shoe materials replaced leather. Disposable razors replaced the safety razor. The barometer came down off the wall. The clock went digital. Each substitution seemed reasonable on its own. Taken together, they quietly dismantled a system of weekly self-governance that had taken generations to build and required no maintenance to sustain, as long as it was practiced. Men used to know this without being told. That phrase sounds like a complaint about the present, but it is actually a description of how culture transmits its deepest values. Not through instruction, through immersion. A boy who watched his father tap the barometer every Sunday morning absorbed something about weather, preparedness, and the relationship between attention and outcome that no classroom could have delivered. The knowing was in the doing, and the doing was in the watching. When the watching stopped, the knowing stopped with it. That is not a moral failure. It is just how transmission works and what happens when it breaks. There is a distinction worth drawing carefully here between habit and ritual. A habit is something you do automatically, without deciding to. A ritual is something you do deliberately, even when it has become familiar. The men who practiced these 25 acts were not running on autopilot. They chose the quiet Sunday morning. They chose the specific brush, the specific order, the specific hour. That choice, repeated weekly with intention, is what separated these acts from mere routine. Intention is the ingredient that turns a task into a ritual, and it is the ingredient most difficult to recover once it has been lost. Of the 25 rituals on this list, most are recoverable today with minimal adjustment. You do not need a felt fedora to brush, but you could lay out the week's clothes on Sunday night. You do not need a barometer on the wall. But you could step outside and look at the sky before checking your phone. You do not need a leather chamois, but you could dry your car by hand instead of letting it streak in the driveway. The specific objects matter less than the specific intention behind them. What made these rituals work was not the wax or the key or the gauge. It was the decision to do them in order every week without being asked. If you could only reclaim one ritual from this entire list, Ethan's argument is the porch sit. Not because it is the most practical, because it is the most honest. It requires nothing except the willingness to stop. Sit in the last hour of daylight and let the weekend end without fighting it. No phone, no radio, no project to finish. Just a man in the street and the quiet acknowledgement that one week is closing and another is coming. That acceptance, practiced weekly, is what kept the Sunday scaries from ever taking hold. It is the ritual that contains all the others inside it. The specificity was the point. Not a brush, but that brush. Not a time, but that hour. Not a walk, but the fence line walk in that direction. The precision was not obsessive. It was protective. When the ritual had a specific form, it could not be quietly skipped or vaguely approximated. The exact weight of the brass key, the exact smell of the carnauba wax, the exact snap of the chamois against the hood. It's these details anchored the ritual in physical reality, where it could not be replaced by good intentions. Vague intentions dissolve, specific acts endure. Your grandfather did not need a tutorial for this. He just needed to do it the same way every Sunday until it was part of who he was. What did a Sunday done right actually feel like from the inside? Not triumphant, not productive in the modern sense of that word. It felt finished. That is the word men of that generation would have used if you had asked them, which nobody did because it seemed too obvious to say. The shoes were done, the clock was wound, the car was checked. The roast was carved and eaten, and the nap was taken, and the paper was folded, and the porch was sat on until the light was gone. And then a man went to bed in a house that was sound, in a week that was ready. With a mind that had no unfinished business left to carry into Monday. That feeling had a name. They called it a good Sunday. That is all 25. If one of these rituals landed for you, if it reminded you of something you watched your father or grandfather do on a Sunday morning that you never quite understood until just now, I want to hear about it. Drop it in the comments. Tell me the specific one. The shoe shine, the clock winding, the porch sit, whatever it was. This channel exists because of those memories and the men behind them. If you are new here, subscribe and stay close. Next time we are going back into the workshop, and what we find there is going to surprise you.